Good morning. My name's Matt Leake. I'm the Senior Development Manager for Bristol Bears and Bath Rugby. We're looking at another wellbeing topic today of partners and families. I'm really pleased to be joined by Millie Farara, who is Tom Lindsay's wife, or Tom Farara as well. I will explain that in a bit. Millie, thank you ever so much for coming on to the webinar to talk about your experiences. I've been a partner with a professional rugby player. As we know, Tom has transitioned and retired and is the Bristol Bears women's coach at the moment, but he's had 16 years in the game playing for Wasps, Gloucester, Bedford, Saracens and Bristol Bears. Tom and Millie live in Bristol. And thank you very much, Millie, for coming on and talking to us today.
That's all right.
Let's deal with the positives first then. What is the good things, the best parts about being a partner or a girlfriend or a wife of a professional rugby player?
There's quite a lot of good things, to be honest. Tom and I met 10 years ago this year. And I come from quite a big rugby background, like family-wise, like we've always gone to games, we've always loved it. So we actually met, I won't delve into the details because it makes me sound weirdo, but
I'm keen now. I know.
Yeah, sure. We
We
met at Twickenham 10 years ago on St George's Day at the double header. And to be honest, like it's definitely had its ups and downs in the 10 years. We've had lots of things happen and things go on, and obviously the moving around clubs is quite difficult, but I think as a whole it's just been a really great experience. And I don't, Tom's just very good at rugby, and I don't love him because of that. It would be pretty bad if I did, but it's just something that every partner's got a job, and some things are a little bit more involved than others. And I think with rugby, it's quite I guess absorbing. It's quite you have to kind of really buy into it because it impacts on so much of your life. So I think the best things that I think have kind of we've gone through, I think just the kind of good and bad, I guess, is moving around and just having the different opportunities and stuff. It's been great. And whilst it's lovely seeing Tom on his highs and stuff after wins and after getting great contracts and stuff, you do get the negative with that, and you have to kind of take the ups and the downs. But I think it's a pretty cool lifestyle. I think you either really like it or you don't. But yeah, for us it's been great, and we've settled down in Bristol and we're pretty happy to stay here. But we've been to some pretty cool places, and when we met he was 23, I think, and I was just 18, I think. So we're a pretty young couple, and it's a really cool lifestyle. It's when you're younger you kind of take it for granted, I guess, going on nice trips and away games and all those things like that. And as we've got a bit older, we're just a little bit more settled, I guess, and you don't take it for granted. But I think the moving around has been it's positive and a negative, but it's opened a lot of doors for Tom and for both of us actually as a couple. And we've got to see some really cool places, some not very nice places as well. But yeah, we're pretty happy in Bristol now. So I'd say the biggest positive, I think, is kind of the experiences that you get, I guess.
Brilliant. Okay. And I suppose the negatives then, or the less good things, to put it politely, what would you say that is? I know you alluded to a couple then as well. I don't have to go into specific. What do you think would be those sort of hard times, or those identify those? What sort of things would that be for yourself personally, I suppose, not just as a couple?
Yeah, I think, as I said, the moving around has been great, but with that comes even if rugby players are paid like footballers, I'm not that person who doesn't want to work. I literally would lose my mind if I was a lady of leisure. I say that, but I probably quite like it now. But yeah, it's been quite difficult moving around, and kind of, I know we've spoken about it before, almost like putting things on hold a little bit. Mm-hmm. We've had a couple of situations where we've been places for like a year at a time. I think one of the lowest points, I think, for both of us, but for me in particular, was when Tom signed for Bedford. I think it was about 4 or 5 years ago now. And he was at Gloucester before. We were really settled in Cheltenham. We'd made loads of friends, which is something we'd never really you know, where you're moving around so much, you definitely make friends, but not necessarily friendships, I guess. You're friendly with a lot of people. But I think Cheltenham, for me personally, is where I met a lot of my friends that I still keep in contact with now, and kind of the place that I felt that we had the best support network, even though we were both away from our families. I'm from Dorset, Tom's from London. We both felt that we were kind of like out on our own a little bit and quite independent, and we met a lot of people and we made a lot of friends. And when it didn't quite work out at Gloucester and we moved to Bedford, we moved back to a flat that we've got in London, which is where we first lived together. And it was great at the time, but I'm really not a London girl at all. I'm from the seaside. I don't like it. I wasn't a fan. And you know, it was quite a difficult period for both of us, I think. But for me in particular, I had a really good job in Cheltenham, and it was just by luck, I think, that they opened up an office in London as we were moving. So that worked quite well. But the commute every day on a tube, not great money, was not enjoying it at all. And Tom was commuting out to Bedford, so it was like an hour and a bit each day. And I don't know what it's like now, but the championship hours, I think the training finished at like 7:30 at night or something. Okay. 1 or 2 nights a week. So, you know, it was just quite a strain on our relationship. I think we were kind of newly engaged, and it's just not how I thought it was going to be. So yeah, that was pretty difficult. And I think, you know, it's that support network that I know a lot of people speak about. You know, when it's good, it's great, but you know, everyone by nature has kind of good days and bad days. And I think at that time, obviously Tom's done a lot of work now with mental health and things like that, and speaking out about it. But at that time, and for a very long time, he didn't speak to anyone about it, and kind of family and friends included. So, you know, it was just kind of both of us. And I was kind of taking on quite a lot of that burden of, you know, people maybe having an opinion of him, and, you know, why does he behave like that? And, you know, Tom the lad out drinking all the time. But I was like, this isn't good. It's not good for him and his kind of state of mind. So I think when we moved to London, it was quite difficult, or moved back, sorry, because he had his family around him, literally 5 minutes down the road, and I had no one. And just because of the nature of kind of going backs and forwards and commuting, you know, I was in an office on my own as well, because it was like a satellite office. So I had no chance to kind of make any friends. And, you know, the Bedford games and the Bedford girls were really lovely and so nice, but you see them once a week at a game, if that, because if it's not away, you know, So it was just quite difficult. You know, we kind of said it was going to be kind of our working year, I guess, is the way that we, you know, let's just kind of not put things on hold, but, you know, let's do the graft this year and kind of see where we can get. So that was quite difficult. And again, like I said, it was just that support network of feeling like Tom had quite a lot. You know, I think for boys in particularly, when they signed for a club, they've signed and made 40 new friends straight away. And obviously a lot of them have partners, so you make friends with them too. But, you know, it is that once a week. The boys are there sometimes daily, doing training and stuff. So they all get to know each other quite well. And, you know, for myself as a partner, I always felt a little bit like, well, you're kind of thrown in at the deep end a little bit. You know, you either make friends or you don't. So that's quite difficult sometimes, I think. Is just almost like a feeling of loneliness a little bit, I guess. And, you know, it's kind of decided quite quickly sometimes if they're a new contract signed or someone else is interested, or where we've been in situations before, the club that you're at is not interested anymore, and you've got that, it's a pretty horrendous period of a couple of months where you're looking at other clubs and contracts and where you want to be. And I think for a long time we didn't really ever have the conversation of where we wanted to be. It was just wherever the contract took us, which, you know, at the time you have to do. You know, at the time anyway, Tom didn't really have any other options. You know, it's kind of rugby or something else, but he wasn't really sure what that was at that time. So you know, Bedford was great for Tom, and it was a great experience, and he absolutely loved it. And I know he did. It was like some of the best rugby he's ever played, and some of the best times I think he's ever had, and he really enjoyed it, and like loved the guys and everything. But for me, it was just a bit of a, I don't know if I'm allowed to swear, crappy time. But yeah, it was just quite tough. And, you know, sounds a bit like, oh, woe is me, you know, like planning a wedding and stuff. But when you've got no friends, you've got no family, you know, Tom's family are great, and they've been a great support to me as well, but it's not your mum and it's not your dad. So that was quite tough. And obviously then having, you know, Tom having experiences that weren't so positive, you kind of feel like you take that burden on yourself a little bit sometimes. But I know that I'm not the only person. I've got a lot of friends that I still speak with whose partners either still play or have retired. And it is that kind of, you know, the transition period, especially now Tom's retired, it's a completely different, no pun intended, ball game. Because it's, you know, it's kind of like out into the real world, I guess. And it's something that for 10 years, I've been, well, for longer, since before I met Tom, you know, I was working, but it's, it's been a difficult, not difficult transition. I think it's just been something new that, you know, he's never experienced before. And I'm just really happy that he kind of spoke out about, well, not just to me, but also to other people about his mental health, I think, you know, even before that transition, because I think we've had a lot of friends, and Tom included, even when we've just gone to different clubs, you know, Tom's quite he won't mind me saying this, he's quite a sensitive soul. And I think he takes things really personally. And as he's grown up, he kind of understands it is just a business. But for a long time, I think is kind of where a lot of things that he's spoken about have stemmed from, is that feeling of like, oh, well, no one wants me anymore, or, you know, I'm not good enough, or whatever it is. So I think he's a lot better now. But as a partner, it's just quite tough at the time to be dealing with your own stuff that's going on, whether it be jobs and the usual stuff that goes on in life. It's quite difficult, I think, sometimes to, you know, things just switch and turn off, and that's it, that job's done, you have to go to another job. And I've been fortunate once where, you know, I could transition between cities, but that doesn't happen all the time. And we had a big conversation when we moved to Bristol that, you know, well, actually it was when we were at Bedford at the time, and we just both said, you know, this isn't going to work if we keep doing this. You know, you're, as much as I understand you have to chase the contract and chase the money and stuff, it does get to the point, you know, we don't have children, and it's not something that we're looking at doing in the future or in the near future. But it did get to a point where it was like, you know, I'm really not that person who's going to say I need it to work for both of us. But it just got to that point where I thought, I'm not going to keep moving around. Like we've done this now. And I think the move to London was just quite tough. You know, we obviously we lived there before, but it wasn't a lifestyle that I was buying into. I know that a lot of people do in London and stuff, but it wasn't working. And it wasn't working for either of us, to be honest. You know, the long hours and Tom commuting every day, every other day, whatever it was, you know, it did take its toll a little bit. And we just sat down one night and I just said, and we both agreed that it's just not feasible for a future. It's not where I wanted to be location wise. You know, as amazing and as fun a time Tom had, I don't think he particularly wanted to kind of drive an hour and back or whatever it was each day to go and play. And we had that discussion of, you know, he was getting a bit older. He is getting a bit older. And I think he kind of felt, you know, he was coming back after games like a broken man. And, you know, I know that rugby is a contact sport, but champ level was like another, I don't know what they were doing to them, but, you know, he was a bit broken sometimes. So we just sat down one night and we both just agreed that, you know, as amazing as it's been, we need to be a little bit selfish and work out what's best for us. And we loved living in Cheltenham and over in the West Country. So, you know, we just said our only option really is Bristol. And Tom was like, well, they're never going to want me there. Like, come on, don't be so silly. And I don't know what the right word, I'm not like spiritual or whatever, but I'm like, right, let's make he's going to take the piss out of me, like a mood board almost, like of where we want to be and what we want and all of that stuff. And the positive affirmation, I think so. Anyway, he really didn't buy into it. And he was just like, it's just not going to happen. They're never going to want me. So we had a big chat about it. And literally, I think like a couple of days later, he had the news that Bristol were really interested and all the meetings started and everything. And, you know, we found an amazing place to live and we're renting at the moment, but we're looking to buy. So that's another stress. But it's just, you know, I think we've kind of come full circle. I think when we first met, we went on, you know, all the nice holidays and I was fresh out of uni. So I was skin ass. So I was like, yeah, you can take me wherever you want. But yeah, I think, you know, when you're younger, it's great because you don't have the worries, I guess, of like jobs and things. I'd just do whatever job I needed to do at the time. But now that we're here, I've got a really solid job that I absolutely love, and I can't say that I've ever had that somewhere else. So, you know, when the time came for Tom to, which was last year, to look at potentially retiring through to COVID and all of those other fun things, you know, we did have a chat about potentially looking elsewhere. And Tom was actually the one that was like, I think it's run its course, really. You know, we're happy to stay in Bristol. We don't want to move anywhere else, which I was very glad at, because it would have been pretty awkward if he'd said he wanted to go. But, you know, we just had quite an open conversation. I think that's, you know, something that we, you know, probably wouldn't have had a couple of years ago, since Tom's been, you know, more open with everyone, I think, with kind of how he is. It's made our relationship a lot easier, because for a long time, you know, he was the life and soul of the party and out on socials and stuff all the time. But as a partner, you're just there to pick up the pieces when, you know, the next morning it's not so great and all of those other things. And I think that is, for me, has been one of the hardest things, is that, you know I've said it before, but that support. And it's quite a lonely, it can be quite a lonely time, I think, when, you know, you are there to pick up the pieces sometimes. And, you know, as I've said, he's quite sensitive. So he, you know, I know that you're not supposed to, but they had all those message boards and stuff. And after games, he'd be on there, and like the things that people would say about him are disgusting.
Yeah.
I know that still happens now, and you're just not supposed to read it, but, you know, you do. And that's, you know, that's just been quite hard. And I think for a long time, he just wasn't very open to anybody. So it's a lot easier now. But yeah, it's just, I think that's probably, for me, is the most negative point of it, is the moving around, and like we've spoken about, almost that putting your life on hold. But then it's also, you know, I think that's why I got to that point where I was like, well, I'm really not that person, but what about me? You know, for a long time it's been, and Tom and I have spoken about this, so I'm not kind of saying anything out of turn. It's, for a long time it is, and it has to be a little bit, really, because, you know, for a lot of, well, for all the players, that is their life for however many years. And you know, you understand that going into it. And a lot of my mates are always like, people who aren't with rugby players, like, oh my God, you're a wag, that's so amazing, da, 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 da. Like, oh, you must have the best life. And I'm like, I have a life like everybody else. Like, I don't understand this. I think it's, well, even footballers, I still don't think really have it. You know, it's, I'm married to Tom, and I love Tom because of who he is, and he just happens to be very good at something. You know, if he was a really good banker or something, I don't know, you know, you'd love them either way. You love someone because of a job. So yeah, I think I've skirted around quite a few things there. I don't know.
No, I think you made a really good point. This is a sort of a two-ended question for me. I think what you said about other people's opinions is really interesting. That's the point I was going to ask. And I know I've seen you at games at Ashton Gate, at various A-League games as well. I think, I'm not necessarily, you brought up the point about Tom with social media and what people say and people's opinions as well. It's Joe Public saying this or the other. How do you cope with that? If, you know, I'm not going to say it has happened, but how is you and your other players, partners have had to cope with that, when you're stood there in a stand and someone said something quite open and quite vocal, who's paid to watch the game, who's having a few beers? How do you cope? Or as you said afterwards, you've gone to a message board, which you shouldn't have done. Maybe you shouldn't have done. But we're all human. You've gone in there, you've read someone say something about your partner, and as you said, then they're talking about his job rather than him as a person, or maybe they are delving into a little bit closer to the person. And then from that, who is your support network? As I know you said about mum and dad. How do you cope with supporting Tom, or how did you cope with supporting Tom? How do you cope with supporting Tom? Just got a two-ended question.
I think for me, I am extremely close to my family, which is really difficult, because although it's only a short 2-hour trip down to Dorset, it's, you know, I don't have that luxury of just, you know, knocking on my door and going to see my mum, which not a lot of people can do at the moment. But I think, you know, I'm on the phone to my mum like a couple of times a week, if not more. If she hasn't heard from me in a couple of days, she thinks I'm dead. So we're a really tight family, and they've been, as are Tom's family, you know, they've been with us throughout all the ups and the downs, on both sides. And I think that they've been a massive crutch for me. And sometimes to my detriment, I guess, if I'm not having a good day or something's happened with Tom or, whatever, I'll speak to my family about it. And then, they've got an opinion of Tom. They absolutely adore him. And they're like, he's like a second son to them. They absolutely love him. But, I'm not saying that's right either, that, I would pick up the phone to my mum. But I think it's just like a natural thing for a lot of people, and definitely for me, that, my mum has always been there, and my dad and my brother as well, have always been there throughout everything, not just myself, but for Tom as well. So for me, they're a massive support. And I think at Gloucester, like I said, I made some really good friends that I'm still really close with. A lot of them were my bridesmaids on our wedding day, and we keep in contact, do way too many bottomless brunches and let off some steam. But yeah, I think for me, as much as I said, you're either friends or friendly with people, I'm pretty much, you get on really well with a lot of the, obviously there's not to use the word cliques, but there's almost like the mums who kind of stick together, and the younger girls who stick together. Everyone, naturally kind of gravitates to different people. But I don't think I've ever had an experience at a rugby club where, girls have been unfriendly. Everyone's really nice. Ultimately, everyone's in the same boat. You give up a big chunk of your life to be with this person. It's not, you're not doing it because you're like, oh, I love rugby. You're doing it because you love that person, and they just happen to be really good at a sport, and that's what they've chosen to do. So for me, I would say my family and my friends that my network of friends that I've made in the sport, I think are a really good crutch, because the amount of times that we used to, when we were allowed, we'd go out drinking most likely, but the amount of times that you'd have a conversation of just the stresses of, like I said, that there's usually a couple of months or, a couple of weeks at least where you're looking at other contracts and looking at moving and, all of these things. And you're just like, sometimes you have to sit back and think, I'm actually going to uproot my life again, for this job that impacts me in no way, but actually impacts everything in my life. And I think sometimes it's been a little bit hard to kind of get that across to friends who, I hate using that, but like not in the sport. I hate that term about, oh, well, you just don't get it. But it's a big ask, and it's, I think for me, they've been a massive support. And I remember, oh God, when was it? Tom was at Gloucester, must have been like 2016, 2017, I think. And they decided that he could go on loan, basically. They just weren't going to play him. So they said, you can go on loan if you like. And, I don't know if it was a good decision at the time, but I don't think Tom really could see very clearly. Saracens came along, I think, and said, we need a hooker kind of ASAP. To which, we didn't have much. I remember it was Valentine's Day, actually. We were having a really nice romantic dinner, and Tom's agent phoned and said, you're going to Saracens for, it was like 6 months or something. I can't remember how long it was, but it was a big chunk. And at the time, for me anyway, I was very much of like, you have to do it. You have to take every opportunity. Like, you don't know where it's going to lead you, and it wasn't until Tom left that I was like, shit, I'm in a new city on my own. Like, I've made friends at that point, but you don't move cities with someone to make new friends. You're doing it because you want to be with that person. And for 6 months, Tom had his support network, which again goes back to that, like, it's almost like a bit of jealousy, I think, when we were in London, that, and I remember we had some really tough conversations, because, I was like, I'm the one who's told you to do this, but I don't know why I told you to do it now when you've actually bloody done it. And I remember that was a really tough time, and he literally left the next day. And I think he was commuting maybe once every couple of weeks. He was living with his family, who live just down the road from where Saracens play and train and everything. So, it was a great opportunity for Tom, but I just remember thinking, like, I literally would go to work every day, get up on my own, go to work, come home. And it was just a bit of a crap time, really. And I remember that his first game playing was Gloucester at home. And I'd been given some tickets by the Gloucester. I think he'd got some by Gloucester. I don't know what happened, but anyway, and I used to work at Gloucester before I met Tom.
Yes,
I used to work in their media department, so I knew a couple of people there, and yeah, I think there was just this mentality of like Tom's a bit of a turncoat, but at the time, people don't understand the decision making behind what we do, and it's at the time it was what was best for Tom, and like you say, they've had a couple of drinks and they're in the stands, and I remember they actually didn't let me in at first. I was called a turncoat. I was like, I don't even know who these people are, but people are literally like shouting turncoat at me, and I was like,
wow.
I worked at a law firm in Cheltenham at the time, and I was like, mate, I don't understand what the hell's going on. And we, thank God, I wasn't sat in the shed, thank God, but I was in one of the end stands, and a guy behind me, Tom, came on, and I remember there was just booze everywhere, and I was just thinking like, oh my God, this is absolutely horrendous. And Tom was a bit of a pussycat, but I'm a little bit of a Rottweiler, and I get really defensive about anyone, like family, friends, or anything. If anything bad is said, I remember this guy, I can't repeat what he said because it was pretty rude, and there was the C word in there somewhere. But yeah, I just remember turning around and I was like, you have no idea, do you? And this guy was like, what? I was like, you have no idea who was sat behind you, do you? I was like, take a look around. There's family, there's children, there's mothers that like, you have no idea. He was like, oh, who the F is he to you? And I said, well, that's my husband. And he was like, oh, well, and he went on a tirade about Tom, even though that he knew I was his partner. So I think sometimes, not like gladiatorial, but it's like, you're there for our entertainment. We don't care about the fact that you're actually a person, and that you're a human being that comes with, family and friends and all that stuff. So that's always been pretty tough. But I think the way that, my support has been my family, and my friends, and just, we talk a lot about everything. Sometimes we'll just bore each other to death and we'll talk something round. But for me, that's just how my family is and how we've dealt with stuff. And, Tom's just very different. And, I think where both of us have come into different families, we've kind of picked up good traits, and, it's just something different. But for a long time, Tom didn't cope at all with it, and didn't know how to cope with it and couldn't cope with it, which he's spoken about an awful lot. And that was quite tough. But I think the way that I've supported Tom is just to be there, which I know sounds ridiculous, but I think, maybe not in the early years because we'd only just met, and I didn't know him too well, but we've literally grown up together. And I remember thinking something's not right. You're out drinking all the time. You're this happy-go-lucky guy on the outside, but I don't see that when you come home sometimes. There's, for whatever reason. And I think the best thing that I think that I've ever done for Tom is push him to get, to talk to someone. For a long time, I think he was just like, oh, well, it's fine, I'll feel better tomorrow, whatever it is. I don't think a lot of the stuff he's gone through is directly to do with rugby. It's just, been a little bit of a trigger, I guess, almost of stuff. But I think it just got to a point for me where I was like, I can support you as much as I can, by being here to listen and to talk to and all of that stuff. But, ultimately it got to a point where I was like, if you don't want to support yourself, then I'm not prepared to keep doing it, because by nature, everyone's got stuff going on. And like, I've been through some pretty horrendous stuff too. And Tom's obviously been there to support me, but it did get to a point where I was like, I can't keep, propping you up if actually you don't want to be propped up. I can't, there's only so much talking and stuff that I can do. But I know it's probably not the greatest answer, but I think just being there for someone to actually listen to them, I think that's been really important for Tom and I. And it's compared to some other people, it might not be that tough of a life that we've gone through, and the good and the bad things. But for us in our little bubble, it's, we've definitely had some ups and downs. And I think if we weren't kind of quite a strong, close couple, it might have been a different outcome. But, ultimately we're just there for each other. And we've got, I've got really good friends and family, and Tom the same. And it's taken a while for, I think, Tom to have that support with his friends, I think, because he's just never been open and honest with them. But I'm kind of a nature of like, if you ask me if I'm okay, I'm actually probably going to tell you. exactly what is wrong with me and what's on my mind. So yeah, I know, like I said, I know it's a bit of a crap answer, but it's just that support, I think, for each other, and the way that it works for us is our family and our friends, and just listening to each other, I think.
Yeah, I think you're really right. I think that listening skill sometimes is so undervalued, isn't it? Being actually an active listener and actually engaging, because I think it is hard, isn't it, for everyone. I think everyone has our own individual lives and work and everything else like that. And as you said earlier, it's a word where I know Tom's still involved with rugby, but it's his job. I know it's a lifestyle as well. You've got to leave and you've got to prepare for it. It's very different to others, but also it's a job. And knowing you, Millie, as well, there's things in your work and professional life and personal life which you've got to deal with as well. So it's that I suppose like any relationship, and it's that compromise and listening and supporting each other as well. So now I think that's a great answer, and probably one that we take for granted and probably don't appreciate as much as well. But no, thank you very much, and it's been really useful knowing you over the last couple of years and knowing Tom over the last couple of years, and sort of the journey you've had in Bristol, and with Tom, as you mentioned, transitioning. It's really exciting times for you as Tom, as Tom's transitioned during a real difficult year with the pandemic. And I know it was it's interesting what that little bit of insight you said then about actually saying, look, I think he's ready for the course, and it's a bit of a brave decision from you both. Again, it's a choice. Look, we're going to pursue something completely different away from playing rugby, because we know coaching and playing is completely different. So I know this webinar, this conversation will help others as well, and hopefully help partners and extended networks, because this is something we definitely want to support more of and look to help more of as well. But just want to say thank you ever so much for this morning, and it was an absolutely fantastic insight. I really appreciate it.
That's all right. Thank you very much for inviting me on.
Thank you.